Morning all. I just want to check, thank you. So you've got the clips up and the first one, and then yes, just noting when to end them, please. Thank you. So good morning all. As you know by now, I have been enjoying my studies and we have a little Bible study going on a Thursday afternoon, and we're still busy with Genesis. And I have had such a laugh with Mary and with others, saying that there is so much in Genesis. I think I could just live in Genesis forever. There's just so much. So I'm having a great time, and I hope those that are joining us are too. And I've had the same kind of comment from someone saying, every time I go through this, there's something else I see. So it's really great. So one of the resources is Dr. Carmen Joy Eames. I'm not sure how you say her name. She is a scholar who has studied Hebrew, and she has these YouTube clips. She's also written many books and all. And so we're studying through Dr. Haas's Bible study, Bible College, Awakening Bible College. And as I say, he's recommended her as one of the resources. And I just find it quite fascinating, and as others have too, how she puts things and how she talks about things. And going through the original Hebrew gives the correct context. And so that's what I'm really enjoying as well, and others. So I'd just like to share two things with you this morning. And then I would like to talk about these clips in the context of our community, because that's where we are, and that's where we operate from our community. So the first one will be Genesis 1:27. And so if you'd like to listen to this, it's just a couple of minutes.
Hello and welcome back for another tour.
We're just waiting
For
for
Tuesday,
to come
we're
through.
in a series on the image of God, and we're Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. We're in a series on the image of God, and we're exploring what does it mean to be God's image. In the first week, I talked about how being God's image is our human identity, that God has created us to rule on His behalf, and our rule is to be benevolent and creative and selfless. In the second week, we talked about how image implies kinship, that we have been invited to be part of God's family, and that we're automatically part of God's family by virtue of being human. Today, I want to talk about partnership. There's a really fascinating thing about this scene in which God creates humans. Maybe you've noticed it. In chapter 1, Genesis 1, verse 26, God says, "Let us make mankind as our image." Let us. There are three main ideas about why God might say, "Let us." The first, and it's a very old one, is to assume that because God is a Trinity, God can speak of us, because He's three in one. While I believe that God is a Trinity, I do not think that's what's going on here, because we do not have a clear revelation of God's Trinitarian nature in the Old Testament. That's not fully revealed until the incarnation of Jesus in the New Testament. So I would say that is not the best reading of "let us" in Genesis 1:26. Others have suggested that because God is king, He can use the royal we, the way the Queen of England might say we when she's referring to herself. I think it's actually more likely that here God is speaking to His heavenly council or court, that there are angels gathered around Him, and He's bringing them in to His deliberations about what He might do. And so he proposes to them, let's make humans. And let's make them in our image, in our likeness. So from the very beginning, community is what defines humanity. Let us, our image. To say it like that implies teamwork and it implies community. From the start, this human community is defined as male and female. In verse 27, we learn, so God created Adam in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. I love this verse because it is unequivocal in affirming that both men and women are made as God's image. The image of God is not a status that's first conferred on men and women are an afterthought. From the beginning, men and women are together defined as the image of God. It's part of our human identity. And although we share the characteristic of being God's image and in being human, we're also different from each other, which is why both are mentioned. We complement each other by being different. Before we go any farther, I want to note something that has just really jumped off the page to me as I've studied these passages. The rulership that we explored earlier in previous Torah Tuesday video is over the animals and the land, not over each other. The man and the woman are designed to be partners. Neither one is to rule each other, and neither one is to rule over other human beings. The point is that one human cannot fill and subdue the earth alone. In order to procreate, you need both male and female. And so both men and women are invited into this task of multiplying and filling the earth, carrying out God's redemptive and creative rule. Now, some of you might be wondering, isn't the woman designed to be the man's helper? And doesn't that imply subservience? We'll talk about that more in a future video. For now, what I want to leave you with is this thought. The first two humans are unnamed until the end of chapter 3. They're not called Adam and Eve using their proper names until the end of chapter 3. And I think that's on purpose. They're called the man and the woman because they are paradigmatic for all humans. We learn from this story of the first man and the first woman what it means to be human. So we will have a lot more to talk about.
So yeah, she just has, oh, we got a bit of an echo. Got that? Great, thank you. So two things to get out of that and to think about in our context is community, that, we were formed in God's image, and it was a community that decided together. God actually included all of his divine counsel in talking about, let us create humans. And so just think about that, in that we were always meant to live in community. We were always meant to be part of living together and each other. And we know that that's always, not always smooth sailing. There's always challenges and things like that, but we're meant to live in community and together and face those challenges together. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is the partnership. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next clip as well. But, I can say that in this community, I've always been able to feel that I can just be me. And I've never felt that I've had to, because I'm a female, I've had to be lesser or anything. Max and Mary have always ensured that we can just be ourselves and we can contribute as who we are. And so the reason that I wanted to bring that up is because sometimes we could have a different perspective on things, and sometimes that actually hinders us being able to be that suitable helper. And so I wanted to bring this up because it's just so beautiful, and it's just so beautifully put, that each of us have a very special attribute and an asset to something to bring to our community, and that we are in partnership together. And as I say, I've always been able to feel that I can just be me in this community, and I really thank Max for being that, Max and Mary. And I guess too, I am fortunate to have grown up like that too. I've never felt that my brothers were more important or over my siblings or sisters, or, we've just always been us. And so I appreciate that. And I think it's a very important platform to work off. And so I'd like to just play the next clip, because that also just enhances this. And I'd like to talk further then about us and our community from that platform. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to another Torah Tuesday. Today we're continuing our series on the image of God, and we're going to focus in on verse 18 of Genesis chapter 2, where the woman is called Adam's helper. But in order to understand what's going on there, we're going to need to back up to verse 5, where we are introduced to the first problem in this passage. There's two problems in the passage that are introduced into the narrative. We'll talk about both of them. Now in verse 5, it says that no shrub had yet appeared on earth and no plant had yet sprung up, for Yahweh God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. So we have two reasons for the lack of fruitfulness on earth. The first is that God hasn't sent rain, and the second is that there's no human to work the ground. So creation isn't able to be fully realized without the partnership between God and humans. And we learn later in verse 8 that God himself is a gardener. We're told that God planted a garden in the east, and so he can do it without humans, but already we're introduced to this idea that God wants to partner with humans to get the work done. And so verse 5 alerts us to that. Now in verse 7, the problem of the lack of fruitfulness begins to be resolved with the creation of the first human. It says, "Then Yahweh God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." Here there's a play on words happening in Hebrew that's fun. God creates an Adam from the Adamah, from the dust of the Adamah. So Adamah means ground, Adam means man, or it can be used to mean mankind or humankind. And here we have the combination of dirt and divine breath to make a human. So as humans, we find ourselves kind of in between two worlds. We're made from the dust, and yet we share life and kinship with God. The divine breath gives Adam something different than the rest of creation. In verse 15, God places the man in the garden and gives him a job to do. His job is to work it and to guard it. And immediately he's given food to eat. He can eat freely from any tree in the garden except for one. He's given a command not to eat from a certain tree. So he has a job to do, food to eat, and a command to keep. And that's when we're introduced to the second problem in this creation account. In verse 18 it says, "Yahweh God said, 'It is not good for the Adam to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.'" Now, all through Genesis 1, as God is creating things, he is calling them good. This is the first moment in the biblical story that we're told that something is not good. And the thing that's not good is the man's loneliness. Loneliness is problematic. He's been given work to do. He needs help doing it. And he's been given a command to keep, and it will be better for him to have companionship so that he can keep that command. So the solution is for God to provide for him an Ezer. Ezer is a Hebrew word for helper. We'll consider what it means in just a minute. In verses 19 and 20, God brings all the animals to the man so that he can name them, again participating in God's creative work. The narrative result of this is the man's realization that none of these animals can be the Ezer. They can't provide the kind of companionship and help that he needs. And so in verse 21, God causes the man to fall into a deep sleep, and he makes a woman. God makes Isha from Ish. So he's a man, and Ish, and out of his body comes an Isha. So similarly, the Adam came from the Adamah. Now the Isha is coming from the Ish. Fun plays on words in Hebrew. The fact that she comes from his side shows us that they have an essential connection with each other, just like the man's essential connection with the ground, because he's made from the ground, she's made from him, so that gives them an essential connection. And it implies that they're supposed to work side by side, no pun intended. But what about her role as Ezer? The word Ezer occurs 90 times in the Old Testament. And what's striking to me, I looked up every single reference in preparation for writing my book, and I discovered that half of those 90 references refer to military allies who come to help someone win a battle. The other half of the references to Ezer refer to God as the helper of Israel. Never in the entire Old Testament is the word Ezer used to describe the work that someone does who is subservient or a servant to someone else. It's always a position of strength, someone helping from a position of strength, someone who's in need.
Thank you. So what really struck me was Ezer and being a military ally. And I really like that because I was thinking about, so we put that in the context of our community and how we operate in our community. So as I say, having that correct platform of understanding first, and then I look at, okay, so I am an ally. So if I'm an ally, you know, if we have a look at military allies, allies come together and they don't work against each other. They actually work together. They work to help each other and they actually work to be stronger. So that's what an ally is. And so then I was thinking that, so if I come to, with that attitude, with that platform to my community, then I am here to support and to enhance. I'm actually here to say, okay, so what is this community about? I then look at our values, take on our values, and I actually internalize them so that I can actually enhance what we have. And I can be put to work in our community alongside everyone else and continue to increase and enhance our objectives of, you know, what God's sent us here for. He's put us all here. And so then I can be an effective partner. I can be an Ezer, and I'm not working to put my own slant on things. I'm not working to increase my own objectives. I'm actually coming from a platform of, okay, this is what this community is about. This is my understanding. Now, what can I do? How can I actually enhance the whatever God has placed on this community? So I just love being in that. To me, it's very exciting, and it gives me energy and life. And I just want to go, okay, so this is the community that we have. These are all the things that we've been given in this incredible community. So how do I be this effective ally, this Ezer, this military ally? So I just really work, I just really enjoy the feeling of actually being able to stand on that platform and just be me. And as you know, I've always on about identity, but I think it's really important because when you stand from the platform when you understand the correct Hebrew and the correct way that the Bible was written, then that's where we can be. We can just be ourselves and come with that beautiful purpose. And so, yeah, as I say, two things I've got out of that, just community, you know, that we were designed to live in community right from the very first, the way that we were created. And so I love that. And so, yeah, as I say, just enjoying how I can put my contribution to this community. And I hope that we can all see that's, you know, just good to think about that, being an Ezer. So I'd like to ask, can we have two helpers? Do we have anyone who would like to help this morning? Thank you, Alex and Mark, or Renata, thank you. And so if we'd like to get into our groups and enjoy communion together. And I would just like to pray and just thank Jesus for just everything. Lord, for being the absolute example in everything that you have done and do of community. All the lessons about you are you in community, and being able to come along and be a suitable helper. Lord, I just thank you for that. I thank you for all these beautiful revelations and the ability to learn and understand things as they were originally written. We're grateful to you, Lord. And as we share your these elements, we just give thanks for you and love you. And yes, you certainly are worthy. Amen.